All right, guys, we're on lesson 60. Before we start, I want you to make sure that you've read page 382 to page 384. We always want to do that before we start our lesson practice. While we're working on lesson practice, it's important that you write down the work that we do so you have some examples. You can also pause the video and rewind if you need to. You can come back and visit this later if necessary as well. So the directions for A, B, and C on lesson practice, which is on page 384, says write and solve an equation for each problem. So this is actually two parts. We need to write and solve an equation. So we're going to write an equation and then we're going to solve the equation. So we're going to write one first and then we're going to solve it. So we got to do this and then this, two steps. So we're going to start by looking at A, which is Javier can sharpen 5 pencils in a minute. How long will it take Javier to sharpen 40 pencils? Well, his speed is 5 pencils per minute. So in 1 minute, he can sharpen 5 pencils. In 2 minutes, he can sharpen 10 pencils. In 3 minutes, he can sharpen 15 pencils. So it's something like this. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 minutes would be 2 times 5 is 10. And 3 minutes would be 3 times 5 is 15. So you get a kind of general idea of what's happening, what our equation is going to look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply our minutes, which will make that n, times 5 pencils, because every minute he's going to sharpen 5 pencils. So our end equation will look something like this. If we've got 5 pencils times the minutes spent will equal 40, because that's how many pencils he sharpened. So we know that this number n here is the question. We don't know how many minutes he sharpened pencils for, but we do know he sharpened 40 pencils, and we do know he can sharpen 5 pencils a minute. We need to solve this. So we're done with the equation. We've got 5n times 40, or 5n equals 40, which is 5 times n equals 40. Well, when we solve a problem like this, we want to get the letter n by itself. And you can look at this as a number family. We know 5 times n equals 40, so 40 divided by n is 5. 40 divided by 5 is n. So we could simply solve 40 divided by 5 because of our number families equals n. And that will give us an answer. Or we can do it algebraically. And we want to get n by itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide 5 by itself. And as long as we do it to the other side, we're good. So it goes 5 divided by 5 is 1, which means that n is going to be 1. 1 times n is n. So n is now by itself. So we've got n over here. And then we have 40 divided by 5. And do you notice that that is here? 40 divided by 5. Well, hopefully you all know what 40 divided by 5 is. 40 divided by 5 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. So n, this letter n here, equals 8. But the question says, how long will it take Javier to sharpen 40 pencils? Well, we're dealing with minutes. So it's going to be 8 minutes. And we could have kept making our table here. We could have done 4 times 5 is 20, 5 times 5, 6 times 5, 7 times 5, and 8 times 5. And that would have given us the answer too. But this is a lot more work. We don't want to do that. So we're going to use our number families. We can look at this example here. We can use our number families by switching those around, or we can just solve it algebraically like we did here. Our answer is n equals 8 minutes. Let's go to B. Again, write and solve. So we have two parts, write and solve, 1 and 2, an equation for each problem. It says the troop hiked 12 miles in 4 hours. The troop's average rate was how many miles per hour? Well, we know that they hiked 12 miles in 4 hours. So we know how long they can go in 4 hours, but we need to know how far they can go in 1 hour. So if I took 4, remember our rate over time, we always can go 4 times in, so because it's some number. So 4 times the minutes, or excuse me, the hours, 4 times the hours, where in equals hours. So if I do 4 times the hours, I would get 12, because we know that in 4 hours, excuse me, I'm sorry. We know that in 4 hours, the N is not hours, my bad. The N is miles. So that's where we made a mistake. So we know that if we take the hours times the miles, we're going to end up with 12, right? So we want to find out how far, or what their rate was per hour. So we're kind of going backwards here. So we can say something like in 4 hours times our miles. Well, in 4 hours we've got 12, right? So we know that 4. Let me back this up here a little bit. Give me a break there for a moment. So we know that we've got 12 miles after 4 hours. So 4 hours times some amount of miles, which is n, will give me 12 miles. And this is actually miles per hour. So this n here equals miles per hour. So we can solve this by using our number family. We know that 4 times n equals 12, or n times 4 equals 12. We know that 12 divided by 4 is going to be n, or 12 divided by n is 4. Or we can solve it algebraically. So again, we're going to take this 4n, we're going to divide both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so that means we have n there. And then 12 divided by 4 is 3. So let's check this. If we have, in 1 hour, we traveled 3 miles, we've got 3, right? In 2 hours, we multiply that times 3. So 2 times 3, we've got 6 miles. And then in 3 hours, times 3 miles per hour, would be 9. And then in 4 hours, times 3 miles per hour, would be 12. So that works. This solution, this equation works here. So my equation, again, is going to be, I put it right here, but I messed with it. So I'm going to write 4n equals 12. Or n equals 3 miles per hour. All right, so let's go back and see what we did on this last one. I didn't put my equation there in my circled answer, so I'm going to write 5n equals 40. Make sure that we have an equation on all of our parts because it asks for both. So 4n equals 12, n equals 3 miles per hour. And we have one more of these. So Alex was paid $48 for 6 hours of work. So we've got $48 for 6 hours of work. How much money was Alexis paid for each hour of work? Well, I'm going to write this one out a little bit for you. So we got 6 hours times in dollars each hour equals $48. I'm just writing that out a little bit for you so you can understand what's going on. So another way of writing that would be to write an equation. So we've got 6 times n equals 48. Well, we can solve this one like we did the other ones. We can solve it with our number families. We can say that 6 times n is 48, n times 6 is 48, or we can say 48 divided by 6 equals n, just like 48 divided by n equals 6, but this is the one we like right there. And we're going to solve it. We could solve this problem pretty easy, I think. This one here, you could do that. But we're going to do the algebraic method too. So we're going to divide both sides by 6. So we divide this side by 6, and we divide this side by 6. That turns into 1. So we've got n over here because 6 divided by 6 is 1. So 1 times n is n, so n is by itself. And then we have 48 divided by 6, which is also there. And 48, 6 times what is 48? It's 8. All right. So the question was, how much money was Alexis paid for each hour of work? So he was paid $8 per hour. And we could check this. So if he worked for 1 hour, he made 8. So we're doing $1 times 8, he made $8. In 2 hours, if he did 2 times 8, he made $16. Oops, I started adding money signs. 3, 4, 5, and we'll pull this down just a tad, and 6. So we're going to put these all times 8, and we should end up with 48. 6 times 8 is 48. So this definitely works. So he's making $8 per hour, and our equation was right here. We're going to put that down. 6n equals 48. So we got our answer, and we have our equation. Apologies there on the B one. I got kind of mixed up on my numbers there, but that's how we work through these problems. Sometimes we make mistakes and we catch ourselves, and we're just careful. Make sure that they make sense. We always check our work. That's what this here was. We're checking our work, making sure that our answers make sense. All right. Thank you very much.